Hello, and welcome to How to Make an Alebrijes. Before we get into the details, what is this art form and where did it begin? Alebrijes are a type of cartoneria. Cartoneria is a form of Mexican folk art that uses paper, cardboard, and glue, or paper mache, to create ephemeral celebratory sculptures. If you have ever heard of a piñata, you are probably already familiar with cartoneria. Cartoneria objects are typically created for seasonal holidays like Mardi Gras, Holy Week, and Day of the Dead, and include everything from large-scale figures to smaller detailed items like masks. For Holy Week, there is a long-standing tradition of creating depictions of Judas and burning the effigy to celebrate the resurrection. Artists that specialize in the papier-mâché technique are known as cartoneros, and the skill is often passed down through generations. Now, what are alebrijes? Alebrijes are a subgenre of cartoneria and were invented by the cartonero Pedro Linares and feature fantastical animals. Pedro Linares' most renowned alebrijes combine features from animals across the three elements of land, air, and water. This means that the creatures might display wings, feathers, fins, scales, hooved feet, and more, all on the same figure. They also are decorated with vibrant colors and detailed patterns. The legend is that Linares first saw these creatures when he was ill, coming out of a fever dream. Linares' unique alebrijes became so popular, they have taken on a life of their own, inspiring generations of makers in Mexico and all over the world. Traditional Linares alebrijes can be made using several methods. Smaller alebrijes are created using mold forms, either by pressing wet paper into the mold or around the mold form, letting the paper dry and removing it from the mold. Larger alebrijes are sometimes made by creating a lightweight structure out of bamboo strips and then covering the frame with wet paper. For this activity, we will be using a third method, which uses wire to create a frame and then paper mache to add volume to the form. To get started, lay out a craft mat and assemble your wire and wire cutters. Ask your librarian to get one of the 3 Math Skills Alebrijes kit. All of the supplies you need are included in this kit. Now think what you'd like to make. Start with a drawing, find an image online, or check out some of the Alebrije reference images included in the Math Skills kit. The reference images in the kit are especially useful because they include an example of what a wire skeleton might look like. I'm going to make this fun little bug. Now we're going to use the wire cutting pliers to cut off a segment of wire and begin to shape the body of the alebrije. Starting with the head and the body. We can add some of the smaller details later. The more wire wrapped around the form, the stronger the skeleton is going to be. And another thing to keep in mind is that it's easier to work with the wire in separate pieces instead of trying to make the whole thing just with one piece of wire. So you're going to have to probably cut several little pieces and then attach them to the form you start making. And as I go along, you're going to see I'm going to add several layers of wire to start defining this form. And here we're going to slow down a little bit so you can see how I attach a new piece of wire to the body that I am starting to define, and really it's just a matter of wrapping a new piece of wire several times around the existing form you already have, and then you can kind of continue forming the next part of your figure, whether it's the head. Right now I'm working on the head and kind of going around and cutting and reattaching and defining those shapes more and more. There's 2 gauges of wire in the kit. There is a thicker gauge and a finer gauge wire. The finer or thinner gauge wire is great for smaller details like around the head, or if there are antenna or little details like that. Right now I'm making a leg. It is with a thicker gauge wire, and you can kind of see I'm wrapping it around several times again to attach it, and then I can just go and kind of clip it to the length that I want it to be at. I'm gonna do it to the other side now. If you're working and you start to get discouraged, don't worry. It might take some trial and error to get the shapes that you're looking for. Don't be afraid to adjust the wire as you're working, to remove some parts, to add some parts. I'm gonna go back and add some more volume to the shell of my bug to really get that big, voluminous shell. Every so often you could check your reference image or drawing to make sure you're not missing any critical details. I almost forgot my bug's antenna, and I'm gonna add those with thinner gauge wire. And when you've built up enough layers on your skeleton, you're ready to move on to the paper mache phase.